So we're hoping business executives, professionals, those who need a little extra help with crafting powerful messages will consider signing up for our professionally speaking workshop. Especially important is helping people address their public speaking anxiety. Next to death, public speaking is considered a very fearful event or opportunity that people avoid. And so we have some strategies. Our two wonderful speakers, Dr. Alexa Chilcutt and Dr. Adam Brooks, are very well versed in communication information sciences, and both of them will be sharing some effective tools and tips and practice opportunities to help calm public speaking anxiety and to make sure that your organization is presented in the best possible light that it can be, both in verbal, nonverbal, and written format. So we're looking forward to that. Hope individuals will go to our webpage, professionallyspeaking.ua.edu, or call our registration services line. They will be glad to assist you with the registration. We have early bird price point at $179 per participant that ends January the 6th. I think January 6th might be an important date around here. So we're looking forward to a good spring and including in that our professionally speaking workshop. Thank you for the opportunity to share with y'all today, and I'm looking forward to presenting with Karen.
Thank you, Brenda. And as Brenda mentioned, our presenter today is Karen Masullo. Karen is the Chief Intelligence Officer and the Executive Vice President of Firestorm. Karen has extensive experience in social media, monitoring, setting up things, following things, and doing training in how to use social media and the tools effectively. Oh, I got tongued around my eye tooth, couldn't see it. Karen, over to you.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you very much, Brenda. And Brenda, I'd also like to say that January 6th is my birthday, so that's a really important date for everyone. Thank you very much, Brenda. I would like to encourage anyone who's interested to explore the information that Brenda shared. Let me just put that screen up again. Anything you do today, if you deliver a talk, a luncheon presentation, a presentation in front of your leadership team on a new idea, the chances that someone has a mobile device and is recording that are pretty good. So learning how to overcome the stress that goes along with a public presentation is a wonderful skill to nurture, and I would encourage everyone to do so. Today we're not just talking about what happens when people speak in public and are recording, but what happens when they speak in public on social and traditional media, and that gets shared. During this session, you can contact us with any questions at firestorm.com, or you can use your chat feature in GoToWebinar. It should be on the right-hand side of your screen. There's a little chat feature. You can type some things in there if you have a question or a comment. And if we're not able to answer your questions today, Bill Baker will make sure I have that information, and I will follow up with you after this session. If your question is for Brenda, please be assured that we'll make sure that the folks at University of Alabama will see your question or comment as well. You can find resources on our website. We do encourage you to visit us. Please stop by. And today we're going to talk a little bit about what threats worry you. Now, I've added some slides to this original presentation because of some evolving situations that occurred yesterday post-campaign. I'm going to apologize in advance if any language within these posts from other people is offensive to you, but that is certainly the nature of what social media is. We accidentally see things we can't unsee quite often, and this is certainly not the most vile but it is something that may be upsetting. So again, I do apologize in advance. And the reason we're going to talk about this is because there are days where we all sit and say to ourselves, what was that person thinking? And if that person is your employee, or even more concerning, if that person who is posting something inappropriate is your leadership, then what do you do? So let's just look at it very quickly. A West Virginia official has been placed on leave after a racist Facebook post about First Lady Michelle Obama. Clay County Development Corporation Director Pamela Ramsey Taylor made a really offensive post after the campaign. I'll let you read that yourself. That was bad enough, and I have family in West Virginia, and the way I was notified of this was the first post. My sister somehow follows this person and sent it to me in a private message and said, can you believe this? Shortly thereafter, Mayor Beverly Whaling responded, just made my day, Pam. The mayor responded. After that, the social accounts disappeared of these two people. Imagine that. In place of one of the social accounts that came back was this apology. There are a lot of things to discuss when it comes to crisis communication. Creating crisis communication when you are stressed, upset, angry, afraid, nervous, or you're the one with the spotlight on them is never going to be ideal. So the first thing, that's why we tell you to have crisis message maps prepared ahead of time, because you never know what might happen. This person should never have actually made this apology post. It's wrong on a lot of levels. So let's dissect it and look and see. My comment was not intended to be racist at all. Well, what I'm asking myself, and what I think you might be asking yourself, is then why comment? Sorry, Roxanne the Wonder Dog is also with me today, so if you hear her bark, that's why. She doesn't like this post either. Why would you comment? Why would she comment on this post at all? Or better yet, why wouldn't she say, Pam, remove this post immediately. This is an exceptionally racist post. I was referring to my day being made for change in the White House. Anybody buying that? I'm not buying it. I am truly sorry for any hard feeling this may have caused. So she's not sorry for commenting on a racist post in some somewhat racist way. She's sorry that your feelings got hurt. To those who know me, I'm not in any way racist. I'm not even going to comment on that. Again, I'd like to apologize for this getting out of hand. So that's what the apology is about. The apology is about this person's immaturity getting in the way and being inconvenient for them to continue on with their day. And this person may think that this apology is enough. We put it to bed. Nobody, just let it go. This isn't something that you just let go. And this person's job may, they may cost them their job because of this, but it's more than that now. If this is your employee, you've got some things to worry about. So you've got the brand and the reputation management of your company, right? How about the safety of the employee? I'm sorry I have forgotten the name. I wrote an article about it, and I'm sorry her name just escapes me, but at one point in time, I think it was back in 2012, there was a young woman who worked for a very small, developmentally disabled nonprofit organization, and she was sent to a convention in Washington, D.C. And in our nation's capital, she went to visit Arlington Cemetery, and she took a selfie of herself in front of a sign that said, no loud, no, talking, no food or drink. This is a place of respect. She took a picture of herself in front of that, flipping the bird. And it was just, I can't even talk about how my head blew up to see that. The problem is that suddenly tons of media descended upon the New York location of this Association for the Developmentally Disabled with only 30 employees. The young woman in question received death threats. People followed her in the street and spit upon her. So I want you to be aware that we're not just talking about some things that happened that, you know, gee, it's kind of fun to look at this and say, oh, how silly those people are. This would never happen to us. Because it could happen to you. It could happen in your company. And the repercussions are much larger than you having a conversation with the employee about you're not following social media policies. There can be increased security that's called for. There are a variety of issues that need to be looked at, and we hope you reach out to us if something like that ever happens, because there's a great deal to be concerned with. But I hope people understand that the insult originally was bad enough, but when you issue off the cuff an apology like this that is a non-apology, you're really going to be creating more trouble for you, your organization, and the people involved. All right, that's my rant on that for today. I want to talk a little bit about social media and what else we're concerned about. And one of the things that Firestorm has worked very hard toward over the last 5 years is a program we call Behavioral Risk Threat Assessment. And in our Behavioral Risk Threat Assessment program, we utilize social media analysis and traditional media analysis through every part of the program, because we know that in almost every instance of violence or terrorism, there was some sort of communication about intent prior to the event. You know, every time you attend one of our sessions, and by the way, thank you for doing so. We've really enjoyed this year with all of you and your follow-up questions and comments and interaction. And we appreciate you answering the little question for us when you register for the session, because it allows us to really do some interesting analysis at the end of the year. One of the things we asked you for business professionals, we said, are you concerned about violence in the workplace? And we surveyed almost 1,000 people with that question. And overwhelmingly, people said they were either very or somewhat concerned. Only a very small percentage said, nah, never going to happen, I'm not concerned at all. So we know that there is a concern that a weapon or a gun or some type of violence can come into the workplace. Our challenge is figuring out, is there any percentage of that we might be able to spot ahead of time? We know that almost every disaster, every incident of violence, every act of terrorism was preceded by a warning signal. So what we need to do is look at what those warning signals could have been. And quite often what we have to do is play that armchair quarterback, and the next day we start seeing some common threads of commentary. I knew this was going to happen. That person was acting really strange. I don't know, something just wasn't right about him. You should have seen the things he posted on social media. Now, every day for Firestorm, I monitor on behalf of our clients. We have school systems, individual schools, businesses, enterprise level, and small, intimate offices. We have instances of customers becoming irate, employees, former employees. We have domestic situations that flow on into business or a campus environment. And what we do is by using open source, publicly posted social data, we analyze it, we narrow it down and put it into context. And through that, we hope we're able to increase the percentage of information that we're seeing in a non-covert way through aggregated data of a potential issue or threat that may be occurring. What if we could stop just one act of violence, or maybe a death that occurs from it, or even self-harm or a suicide? Let's take a hypothetical employee. We're going to call him Fred, and we're going to see if we can look for signs that might be going on that give us an indication that there are escalating challenges occurring. The first thing that might happen is maybe Fred starts receiving poor performance reviews and he's not happy about it. In a school environment, it might be we see grades starting to drop. He has an argument and seemingly out of nowhere at the coffee shop. When you're out with him at lunch, he starts exhibiting anger, whereas before he never would before. A coworker reports that this person got really upset about something at work and was heard to say, "You'll be sorry." Suddenly, the employee's absenteeism rate increases abruptly, and friends hear him talking crazy, but they don't want to get involved, or you don't have an anonymous reporting system in place so that someone can report the instance. And last, Fred's social media posts start escalating. He's tired of being treated like a dog. He's going to make them all sorry tomorrow. Now, some of you are saying, well, this is, theoretical. This is not something that really happened. Actually, it is. We have, through last year, right at about this time of year, we watched this sort of escalating anger from an employee for a very large employer. And at some point, we saw that there were some racial tensions going on within the organization, and this person blamed their immediate manager. And at one point, we saw escalating anger as he was driving his car because he was tweeting from inside his car with this road rage sort of attitude. There were videos or, self-produced like Meerkat Periscope kind of, 8-second videos on increasing rage. And at one point he did say that he would bring a weapon, and certainly the company did intercede at that point. And we like to think, because we alerted the company and the company was able to intercede, that you didn't read about anything in the paper because of that. That's our goal. Our goal is that you not read about another workplace violence episode. Now, when we see all of these kinds of signals, the first thing we need to do is sit down and say, okay, who's in charge? Who do we tell? When our team creates a social media monitoring or predictive intelligence program for a school or campus or an organization, we first define what the workflow is going to be. If there is an alert of some type, who's the first person that gets notified? Is there a team of people that all get notified at the same time? And then once they get notified, who is next to be notified? We need to make sure that we have carefully mapped out what that conversation and escalation route is going to be. Then, who can see these threats? Who can see these messages? How are they delivered? One of the last things I want for any of you on this call is for you to get up in the morning, you're getting ready, you pour yourself a cup of coffee, you look at your phone, and there are 17 urgent messages that came in overnight because somebody spotted a threat on social media, and you are the last to know. Additionally, if there have been issues ongoing with someone, there was a terribly tragic story of a young man who had been posting on social media for almost a year that he was escalating to a violent act. He posted on social media the day he bought a really dangerous knife. He showed himself in his car after the purchase. He then started posting about how much he hated his roommates, how one day his roommate was going to die. He then posted how easy it was to buy a gun, and he posted a picture of himself, again, in his car with his gun. And 2 days later, the headline read, John Doe, this person's name, arrested for the murder of 2 of his roommates. These were not idle threats. So when we see a history of these things happening, where does that get reported? Within your organization, how does that get reported? And do they all go to the same place? Here's an example. We have a mall, let's say, that we're doing monitoring for. And one of the security guards sees a threat. They see something that's not right, and they make a note of it in a log. Does HR ever see that log? Does building management ever see that log? Does anyone ever see that log other than the security person and the security company? That's the important thing, is where does all of that data go so that it's transparent to all teams, and specifically something called a behavioral threat team that is trained specifically to respond. When we do this, when we work together to really connect the dots, what we hope is that we can keep that gun from coming in to your building. So we're going to do that through 4 key preventative steps. The first is you've got to assess your risk. You've got to know what kind of risk you have. And from my team's perspective, from the social media perspective, we can uncover some things you didn't even know were going on. Now, there's a great deal of speech that's protected, and we don't want to interrupt an employee's right to discuss anything on social media that's under the guise of protected speech, and that's part of the work we'll do with you and the training we do with you and your HR teams, because we never want to squelch free speech. But we do need to let you understand the nature and risk that allows your school or your organization to take appropriate steps if there is some escalating issue that we spot on the internet. So for everyone on this call, please understand that because you are connected to the university, if you will contact us at webinars@firestorm.com, you can certainly contact me directly or Bill Baker, our moderator on this call. And again, at webinars@firestorm.com, we'll see it. Just mention that you were on this webinar and that you would like to schedule your 1-hour no-fee assessment. And we'll do a high-level assessment with you for no fee. And as Jim Satterfield has told you throughout the year, that is our best price. So please, let's start there and assess the risk. You know, these are just, if every single week you can look and do a search, you will see that every single week there is an instance of some piece of workplace violence or school violence. And again, we want to be able to find on these instances that I'm showing you, there were escalating social media posts related to a former employee. He wasn't happy about the way he was treated on separation. And we really must be conscious of the signals that allow us to intervene.
We look at trend monitoring as well. So we assess your risk, and then we look at your geographic location. We look at your city, your town, your environment, so that we can better understand what certain language, terminology is used, and understand what your local trends are as far as conversation goes, so that we can do our next step of putting things into context. You know, we asked participants if their organization had a documented and trained program to identify behaviors of concern, and 37% said they did have a program to identify behaviors of concern. Now that's great. We're happy about that. We'd like to see it much higher. We'd like to see that be 100%. But 40% didn't have a program at all. And the remaining 23%, quite frankly, just weren't sure. We asked, do you know where to go if you saw a threat? Well, I guess I'd go to HR. Some people said. Some people said they'd go to their manager. Some people said they'd go to their supervisor. And that's where the challenges start, is when we're all going different places. So we've got to assess, we've got to understand the approaches and trends that are going on in your specific area or industry. Then we have to create that plan to support it. We also have to be sure we know who's in the building. You must conduct, you must invest in some sort of pre-employment screening to protect against and prevent the introduction of issues into your workplace. We know of a growing company right now that's got a super product, and that's why they're a growing company. They went from 5 employees to almost, I think there might be at 9,000 in the blink of an eye. And the challenge with that is, in one of their production facilities, they are desperate for employees. They are recruiting 24 hours a day. And they really need folks in the manufacturing environment. The problem is they are being forced to hire 2 warring groups of people. They are bringing into their organization 2 very different groups of people who are known to be violent with each other. And that is a real challenge for them to understand what is coming into their building, and their liability is through the roof because of it. You know, and it's not just about active violence. Just as we spoke in the beginning with our mayor issuing something really ridiculous, we have employee theft of intellectual property. 4 of every 5 victim organizations have fewer than 100 employees as well. Just over half have fewer than 25 employees. And when theft occurs in a very small environment, it can kill your organization. If you read about somebody embezzling $13,000 from someplace, you say, oh, well, you know, that's too bad. If that was your payroll for the month for your small organization, you have nowhere to go. We can also look for these kinds of clues in behavior, again, on publicly posted postings, nothing covert. Last, we do an aggregation of all of these social media or open source posts. We look for risk of harm, we look for compliance and legal risk issues, operational risk, and reputational risk. And we utilize what we call predictive intelligence. And we know that people know things, and when they know things, they talk. And today, the place everyone talks is on social media. We all have problems with our neck and our back now. When was the last time you walked into a restaurant and just count the next time you go to any restaurant, what percentage of people's heads are down looking at their phone? People ask other people to pass the salt via a text message. So that's where we go to look. We go to the source of the information. Now I want to talk to you about something. I mentioned a little bit that we can look at your building, your campus, we can see anything that's publicly posted, social commentary that's ongoing. And part of that is using a tool that allows us to actually look at your physical location, draw a circle or square around it, drop a pin in it, and see all posts coming out of this area. There are lots of free tools that you can do this with, but they only do one social application at a time. Our application allows me to see everything at once, or as in this image, I've asked it to just show me Instagram and Twitter. In other situations, I might just want to see Yik Yak. And in this specific case, Yik Yak is exactly what we're going to be talking about. All of these posts have geolocation turned on the device. So we look at two sources of data. We look at geolocation specific data, and then we look at keyword or key phrases. So we can gather in the highest majority of posts related to a specific subject. However, a guy named Hunter Park recently tricked a huge campus students into thinking he was actually on campus and threatening to shoot. And he did this through something called geo-spoofing, and he really created hysteria, absolutely, as it would have on the campus. And he thought it was funny. He posted on another social site, I believe it was Reddit. He said, "My roommates and I spoofed our GPS and are trolling your Yik Yak. It's fantastic. Ha, 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 Hunter." Hunter was arrested for making this terroristic threat. He used a fake GPS location spoofing service. And the reason I bring this up is because when we are searching, and we do a geo search as well, we need to then take that extra step to figure out if we're being spoofed or not. This was the yak that he posted. "I'm going to stand my ground tomorrow and shoot every black person I see." Well, this is at a time that, and the time is not that long ago, September, Missouri was really having some civil unrest, and there were problems. And this was just a horrible thing to suddenly have pop up on campus, within the geofence of the campus. The thing was, he was 100 miles away. And I bring this up because if you can spoof to appear you are at a location when you are elsewhere, you can also appear to be elsewhere when you are at a location. And that threat is actually coming from a specific location, even though your geocode may show that you were 100 miles away. So we have to look at all of these things. I want you to read this comment and think about with your team what this might, what you feel about this. When are we going to stop taking these threats seriously? Do we really think the bad guys are going to tell authorities their plan before it happens? It's probably just some kid who wanted to get out of his Friday afternoon test. Now, we see bomb threats, etc., at schools, public buildings, companies all the time. And I think it's important we look at this guy's point. Do we really think the bad guys are going to tell the authorities their plan before it happens? Yes, we do. And the reason we do is because we see it happen time and time again. I have given you only 3 examples here out of so many that I could have, page after page. UC Merced, a student tossed from the study group, had a manifesto. I believe he had that on Tumblr. The Oregon Shooters Manifesto, he had posted it in part on Facebook, post after post. Elliot Rodger, I saw every video that Elliot Rodger posted before they were taken down by YouTube, and they were truly frightening. His parents did see the threat and did try to intervene. Sadly, they could not get to him before he wounded so many people on the UC campus. "You forced me to suffer all my life. Now I will make you all suffer. I waited a long time for this." These are the kinds of things, these are the type of phrases that we can look for. Keywords, key phrases around your organization, your campus, in order to let you know if we feel there is an escalating threat. How do we find the threats? I may change this because I was watching a television show called Superstore, and they actually used the same acronym, and it was very funny, but no, I think I have to change it. But we use awareness, context, and then we combine that with tools and training on our team to help you keep your employees safer. When we look at awareness, we look at two things. These are just different posts that we see related to different things we're monitoring for. It killed my body and I hate produce. Someone in the retail area, it killed my body and my soul. I switched over to cashier and it's okay. I'm going to be in retail forever. Here's the threat. One day I'm going to take a gun to work and shoot myself in front of the first expletive customer I encounter so they have my blood on their hands forever. That's not some idle sort of, oh, I hate my job kind of thing. That's a very specific type of threat. We want to get this person help. We want to help this person and their coworkers. We want to more closely understand how we can intervene early to keep that specific gun from walking into that specific retail environment. On the flip side, what about the news out of Charlotte at the Pizza Hut where an employee actually shot and killed a robber, and is actually, I believe there is a suit now by someone, by a relative saying, why did that employee have a gun and shot my child? So there's litigation then on this side if there's a concealed weapon in a business that certainly the business did not sanction or allow. So we become aware and then we put it into context. All right, here's a post that we surfaced during one of our searches. I'm taking my gun to school. Yesterday they tried to jump me. Well, the next thing we do is we have to understand what the source of this is. The source of this is that these are the lyrics to a song called School by an up-and-coming rapper. I'm going to take my gun to school. Yesterday they tried to jump me. I'm going to take my gun to school really hit the scene in about 2013, I believe it was, or 2014. A band named Emure wrote a song called I'm going to take my gun to school. And while the band is really quite poor, and people will admit that the band is quite poor, we saw almost 2 million hits in a 24-hour period when that song came out. So we had to alert our organizations, our parents, different school organizations. We did a webinar for the University of Alabama and mentioned it, and let people know you may see this, their their song lyrics. We still have to take it seriously and understand if it's a real threat, but we want you to know you're going to see an increase. So we put it into context. And then we use the tools at our disposal to narrow it down and, most importantly, to exclude those items that have nothing to do with what we're looking at. We have a client whose name of their brand is also the name of a very popular anime character. And so it creates challenges when monitoring because we have to make sure we're also excluding the right terms. And that's why people bring someone like Firestorm in to set up and work with their teams on monitoring and behavioral risk management, because the nuances of making sure you're doing it the right way to be most efficient and cost effective requires special tools and people to be trained. And what other kinds of threats are there? You know, we saw this threat. It was someone was very unhappy with a debt collection service that kept calling even after they expressly asked them to stop calling. So what this person did was threaten to release the phone numbers of the CEO of the company, and did. Not only released the CEO's home phone number, but their address. So we do that as well. We will monitor not only your CEO's name and the name of their family and children, especially if your CEO's name is John Doe or John Smith. We want to also monitor for their phone number, their address, or other pieces of information that might be specifically used to harm them. There are other instances where your CEO might be the one who creates the issue, and you need to know about it in your job so that you can manage brand and reputation. T-Mobile CEO sadly didn't know who the Electronic Frontier Foundation was, or EFF. EFF really thought that was amusing. And the folks at EFF just slammed T-Mobile CEO, and John Laguerre, the CEO, had done a video. He was very critical of some areas. He just created a problem for the brand. And you need to know that. When you get up in the morning and go to your job, you need to know if there's some cleanup going to be required because someone has said something inappropriate or wasn't thinking on social media, in addition to threats. Now, how do we look at the difference between threats and behaviors of concern? Threatening behavior is pretty clear. It's bullying, it's cyberbullying, it's a fight, it's stalking, it's violent. I walk up to you, I push you, and I say, you're going to be sorry tomorrow, and I'm bringing a gun to work. Behaviors of concern are not so clear. They're escalating. They start from blaming other people and identifying other people who they believe to be the cause of their problems, and they move into veiled or indirect threats. And those veiled or indirect threats may show themselves via social or traditional types of media. You know, before we would find someone's journal when something sadly had occurred. Now that journal may be posted on WordPress or Blogger, and we can see it before something happens. That's the benefit. Are there still people who are troubled and need help? Absolutely. But we may be able to intervene earlier by identifying language of concern that goes with behaviors of concern. You know, we've asked you throughout the year, do you use internal intelligence to identify threats? 37% of the people said no. 30% of the people said yes. And there's this other chunk of 30% that just don't know. And we want everyone in your organization to be aware of your policies and to know so that if they see something, they can say something in a way that's actionable and makes sense. And what this does is move your company or your organization from this stage of maturity, which is where everything is a surprise. There are some of you sitting there on the phone today who say, well, that's my company right now. It's like every day is a surprise. Nobody knows how to act. Or you're in a company right now where you feel like everything is a reaction. We know things are coming, but we just don't have time to plan for it or resources. There's the stage 3 company, which really starts to take pre-action into account. That means that you know there are threats, you know you have to react to them, so you're going to plan how you're going to react to them. You're going to have message maps. You're going to predefine event-specific information. The last stage is where we want you to be, where our clients that have worked with us for the 10 years we have been here get to, and that is where you are a strategic culture. You have a clear playbook for major crisis types, clearly defined and established roles and responsibilities, basic and event type of information that's predefined, highly efficient decision-making processes, and that decision-making process is driven by the receipt of real intelligence, real predictive data. And that is where monitoring comes in, we're able to feed the people who are making the real decisions in your company real information in real time. As we leave today and close this session, I'm going to remind you that the greatest obstacle to discovery is not ignorance, but rather it is the illusion of knowledge. You can download a copy of the brief of this session that will cover the high points that we discussed today at firestorm.com/briefs. That should be ready in about 48 hours. And you can find that also under our menu on our website under resources. I'd like to remind you again to join the University of Alabama at the Bryant Conference Center on February 10th. And I'd like to turn it back to you, Brenda. Are there any closing comments that you'd like to make to our audience today?
Thank you, Karen. I always learn something in the webinar, whether it's you or Jim, whoever the speaker is. And today I really found out I need to learn some things about Yik Yak. I'm kind of behind on that myself. So always learn something new, and that's what we are all about here at the University of Alabama, being thought leaders and partnering with great companies like Firestorm to make sure that we're on the cutting edge of sharing knowledge and information that will help our businesses, our schools, and just the everyday person go through their day, hopefully as safely as possible. I really enjoyed it today, Karen. Thanks so much.
Oh, thank you, and I'll be happy to reach out and have a Yik Yak conversation with you. Be more than happy to do that. Everyone, thank you so much. We appreciate your participation today. Please do let us know if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or requests at webinars@firestorm.com. Thanks again, and this will conclude today's session. Have a great day.